Let's take a look at what we've just entered. As we can see, the date and time in the second column has been entered in the same way as it was in the complaints table. If you look at the first column, you'll notice, although that's a bit difficult to read, it in fact reads the same data as there is in the date-time column. It's just not formatted in such a clear way. This is a timestamp, and if you're aware of Unix timestamps, you'll know that this is based on the number of seconds since January the 1st, 1970. If you're not aware of Unix timestamps, then you don't need to worry about this piece of information. The date column will simply store the date in the format year, month, day. The time column will store hours, minutes and seconds just before 11 o'clock, and the year column will store the year in a 4-digit format. Now let's take a look at the use of the year column. So we're just inserting into Y, that's the year column, and we're going to put in the value 45. Now, as you might expect, the year column enters 2045. It's approximated what it thinks is the most likely year from the values we put in. However, we may have wanted to say 1945, so that creates a bit of confusion. Let's say if we wanted to insert a different date into the year column, the Y column, represents years. Let's say we wanted to put in the year 71. Now this time, the 71 date would have been interpreted in the 20th century, that is 1971. The reason for this is if we try and enter a year rather, with just 2 digits, then MySQL will approximate, depending on whether it's before or after 70, whether we want to put 20 before it or 19. We can get round all of this by simply specifying what we want to the particular date that we want to put in. In this case, 1945. Then when we go to check the data, as you can see, the 4 digits are a much better and more reliable way of entering dates. Always do this if at all possible. Situations when it may not be possible would include when you're porting data from another application in which the dates are stored in 2-digit format. One more thing is if you look at the other columns, apart from the year column, as we've been entering data, they've all stayed null apart from the first one. Now this is because a timestamp column will automatically be updated with the current time and date, just as if we'd have specified that the function now should be inserted into the timestamp column. This only applies for the first timestamp. If you have more than one timestamp column in a particular table, then this will only happen to the first of the columns. You can get around this by, say, if you wanted to store a date and time in the timestamp format, and then you wanted to make a change to that particular row, but you didn't want the timestamp column to update, then you can get around that by simply setting the timestamp to its own value. This may seem a little strange, but it's a good way of keeping checks on when a row was last modified. In our next movie, we're going to look at some very handy functions for dealing with the date and time.